Hello, and welcome to a bonus edition of the Dragon Slayer podcast in association with Riverside Sports Bar. I'm Jamie, and joining me for this one is Gavin Thomas. How are we, Gav?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good, good. So let's set the scene for this now. So I'm currently on holiday at the moment. I'm not in the UK. And we wasn't planning on doing any podcast for a couple of weeks, that was the plan. During the international break, we won't do any podcasts. However, some very important news broke, and we felt that we had to talk about it. So this is an emergency pod. I didn't want to be doing this pod at this stage of the season, I have to be honest. I'm quite sad that we're doing it, but some significant news has broken at Rodney Parade. On Saturday morning at 11 a.m., the Dragons announced, to the surprise of many people, that they have parted company with Dai Flanagan. So this was the statement in full on their website. Dragons RFC can today confirm the departure of Dai Flanagan from his role as head coach with immediate effect. The decision has been mutually agreed by all parties following extensive discussions regarding the club's performance and future direction. After first joining the club in June 2022, Flanagan has taken sole charge of rugby operations for the last 2 seasons and into the start of the 2024/25 campaign. We thank Dai for his contribution, professionalism, and dedication to Dragons RFC throughout his time at the club, and we wish him and his family well for the future. Philo Tiatia will now take charge of the team as interim head coach, supported by the current coaching staff, and Dragons RFC will make further announcements on the coaching team going forward in due course. Right, so there you have it then. The Dai Flanagan era is over. Dai's contract was due to expire next year, but the Dragons owners have brought an early end to his reign after a disappointing first block of fixtures. Dragons are 1 from bottom of the URC table as things stand after failing to build on the opening weekend win against the Ospreys. In the URC table, we are currently 3 points behind Ospreys, 9 points behind Cardiff and Scarlets. And Tia, who joined as defence coach this summer, will now call the shots as interim head coach when the Dragons return to action in the URC at Cardiff on November the 30th. So, Gav, you've had a bit of time now to stew on this shock announcement. What's your reaction to it?
I understand it. I'm not convinced it's the right idea. Is my initial view on it. I do understand. It's a results business. But as I said to you last week, who do you have in place? Who do you replace him? Fair enough, Tia is there. But that's less coaching capacity than we had before. I'm not convinced by Tia as a head coach. He's not done it successfully, really. Anyway, and I appreciate the Sunwolves. Kind of a magician couldn't have made them functioning, but. So I don't know. Is there a plan? Because if there isn't a plan, who we getting? So it just well, I get it, but yeah, there was a couple of games we could have won. It's all knife-edge stuff. What's going to make our team better? Better coaching will make our team better, yes. But we have a group of players who can only reach a certain point. Coaching will take you from there to there rather than from there to, up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think those 2 home games, in particular the Sharks, I feel if Dai had won that, he'd probably still be in a job because that was the one that really got away. I mean, the Lions, there was a lack of energy in the second half.
Yeah.
I do have it on good authority, though, that Dai was given a target of 3 home wins in the first block. Unfortunately, he didn't achieve that. But it could have been 3 home wins if for, better goal kicking, particularly in our Sharks game, against the Lions, better decision making, bit more energy in the second half. There was a lot of factors that went against us, whereas on another day they could have gone in our favour. And I have to be honest, I did feel, especially after that Connacht defeat and the manner of it, because we were huge underdogs for that Connacht game, let's be honest. And I've seen some people trying to say that we played well in that game. We didn't at all. I don't know what game they're watching, but it's clearly different to what I saw. The Dragons were bloody awful in Connacht. It's all very well saying, look how many times they entered the 22, but we didn't do anything in the 22. Once we got there, Our skill set was poor, the decision making, falling off tackles.
The
I think,
Connacht game was the worst performance yet, I would say. Yeah,
yeah,
bizarrely, I would say the next worst was probably against Ospreys, which we won. And I think we played well against two South African sides. We played well for 50 minutes against Leinster, and we were fine against Benetton.
yeah. If we'd won either of those games against Sharks and Lions, and we put in a better performance against Connacht, I have no doubt that I would still be in the job. But unfortunately, he didn't meet this target in the first block, and that Connacht game really was disappointing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And
no,
look,
it was last season levels, and we can't slump to that. But
no,
we've got the playing staff we've got.
yeah, definitely. And it felt like a return to same old Dragons. I wrote that as well on social media. To me, it did feel like a step backwards and same old Dragons. I think the first thing to say, though, Gav, is we could talk for hours about what a nice guy Dai is, because
100%.
he is a genuinely nice guy. We had him on our podcast. Fair play. He was open. He was honest. He fronted up against some tricky questions from supporters. He didn't have to do that,
No,
but he did. He gave up his time to talk to us, and I'll always appreciate him for that. He's a really good bloke, a warm human being, a proud man of Gwent. I really wanted him to succeed in this role. I really did. I was desperate for him to turn it round. But maybe part of the problem that Dai, encountered at the Dragons, maybe he was just too nice for the job. Maybe he didn't have that ruthless streak that's needed by a head coach, and maybe he was too loyal to certain players at the club. Would you say that those are fair observations?
well, I don't think he's ever come across as a disciplinarian, is it? He's not Alex Ferguson. Like, it's
No, it's not.
you know, and but I thought it worked. It worked with the group of players he had. Particularly the younger players. And in terms of loyalty to certain players, don't know. He, there are players in the squad who aren't good enough to be playing that level.
Yeah,
But who do you replace them with? That's the other issue as well, isn't it? It's
yeah,
and like kind of Jordan Williams is a great example of it. Yeah, he's not good enough, but he's what we've got.
yeah. I don't want to pick out certain players, but you are right. We have
Yeah,
spoken about it on this pod many
yeah.
times. There is a select few players at the club who probably aren't good enough at this level and are probably Super Rugby Cymru level. But
But
it
but
is what it is.
but kind of not one player at that club is a poor professional.
No,
I think that's the important thing to say. That they might not be good enough in terms of playing at that level, but no one of them has ever. Because I read lots of things saying, well, the players haven't tried hard enough. Well, I think that shows a distinct lack of understanding of what it is to be a rugby player at any level. You know,
yeah, of
you
course.
so I don't think that's the issue. My question is, what is going to be better than what we have right now?
Yeah. That's a fair point. And look, nobody goes out onto a rugby field, Gav, to be bad, do they? Nobody
No,
does that. So it's just their ability. It's just is
yeah,
what it is. Um, a lot of people feel that Dai Flanagan overachieved actually with the squad that we have. We'll come on to that a bit later. When you look at the stats, however, Gav, they don't make for good reading.
no. Is it
So
4 wins?
I'll come on to it now. So,
Yeah.
firstly, Dai has the worst win rate out of every Dragons coach since the team was founded in 2003. So he has a win rate of 20.8%. That's very low.
Hmm.
Dai was in charge for 48 games. During that time, he had 10 wins, a draw, and 37 losses. The Dragons have finished 15th out of 16 in both his seasons in charge, and that's where they currently are now. And that's probably where they're going to stay, if we're being honest.
Yeah,
On the whole, the Connacht game aside, because that was pretty bad, performances have improved,
yeah.
especially compared to last season, but the results haven't improved. And professional sport, as we know, Gav, is a results-driven industry. So what
Yeah,
do you make of those stats?
yeah, that's actually better than I realised. How many of those are league wins, those 10 wins?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I have to be honest.
because I read somewhere that he'd won 4 league games, but it'll be more than that, won't it?
It probably will be a lot more than that. Yeah.
I'd say 6 or 7 probably league wins, and then Challenge Cup wins. Yeah, it's winning 1 game in every 5 is not enough, is it? It's it would lose your job in any sporting context, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I will try and find out what those wins are. So he had a win against Munster at Ronnie Parade, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then he beat Ospreys and Zebra.
Yeah.
Since then, he would enjoy 7 more victories. So he beat Poe, Scarlets twice, Ospreys twice, Oyonnax, and Zebra. So those are the wins he had as head coach. Yeah, but even though that is the worst record out of all the Dragons coaches, Gav, it doesn't quite tell the full story, does it? Because let's be honest, Dai Flanagan had to put up with a lot of off-field crap.
Yes.
When he arrived at the Dragons, of course, he was there as an assistant to Dean Ryan because Dean Ryan was the director of rugby. And if you remember that game against Edinburgh, the first game of the season where Dragons just capitulated and Dean Ryan threw his players under the bus, was paid off. And then all of a sudden, Dai Flanagan slung into the hot seat. At this point in time, man, don't forget, he had no director of rugby, he had no head of recruitment, and he had no defence coach. And this is where I think the Dragons have let him down.
Yeah,
he did not get the support that he needed. For a young coach who was still learning on the job, he needed more patience and he needed more support. And this is where, like I said, I think the Dragons failed him on that. It's a big burden, Gav, isn't it, for a young guy on his shoulders to have no defence coach, no head of recruitment, no director of rugby. He's spreading himself thin in so many positions. It's not fair in many ways.
And when he took over, that was Dean Ryan's recruitment. It wasn't his. There were players that Dean Ryan had brought in. I think he was always pushing the boulder up too steep a hill. He was always stacked against him. I think there are issues because we've said it before. Neither of us really know where our playing style is.
No identity.
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
But he did as well as he could do. It would be my take on it.
Yeah. So is there an argument to be made then that given the resources, and we know we don't have the resources and quality and budget that other teams have in this really tough competitive league, given the resources and squad available to him, are results actually in line with what's to be expected, or should we have expected more? It's a tricky one, isn't it?
I think, right, let's be realistic. Could we have won many more last season? No. Could we have, but we could, there's 2 games we've lost this season that we could have won. And I think they've given him his opportunity to improve, and he has improved, but they've not improved enough. And that's perhaps where the board is lying, in terms of, but let's be realistic. We've got the joint second lowest budget in the league with the other Welsh regions. So that's our point of comparison, isn't it? That's our point of comparison, not how well we're doing in comparison to Leinster or Munster, how well we're doing in comparison to Scarlets and Cardiff particularly. And they've kicked on.
Yeah, we're all on the same budget now. That's the thing.
And we have not.
Yeah.
And Cardiff, you know exactly what kind of rugby they play. And Scarlets, you know exactly what kind of rugby they're playing now. And Ospreys to a degree, as well. Kind of Cardiff and Scarlets rugby is prettier than Ospreys. But, we aren't performing at the same level as those, and we beat Ospreys, but we probably shouldn't have.
We were lucky, wasn't we? Let's be honest. As much as we enjoyed that win, it's always good to beat the Ospreys over on the parade or anywhere, really. But we were lucky with our win. We got out of jail. But that's when the bench, for the first time this season, actually made an impact because they haven't done it for the rest of the season. Our bench won us the game. And since then, it's done anything but.
Yeah. And, we've been tricky. It's been tricky with injuries. But there's been some decision making as well. I think that's really. So we brought Harry Wilson in, he's played 1.5 games. He had a poor game the second game, and I know he seems to be persona non grata.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, that, isn't
There
it?
seems to be there are issues clearly with what we're trying to do. And we bring in all these young players in, but they aren't ready yet. It just seems to lack any real plan, even the recruitment this season. And I don't want to be that bloke because we've read plenty of it, but we didn't really strengthen the. And I'm not saying tight five because I think Steve Cummins and Shane Lewis Hughes are better than what we had in the second row.
Ollie Burrows was brought in
Yeah,
as well.
but he's not really had a look in, has he?
No, because Brody Coggin has been doing really well in
Yeah,
fairness. So we've got good depth at hooker as well. We've got
but
Elliot D to come back as well.
hooker's not an issue. It's kind of but it's props at when you scrummages, not hookers essentially.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we do have to acknowledge the massive injury list that the
Yeah,
Dragons,
of course.
us and Ospreys have really suffered this season through injuries, far more than Cardiff and Scarlets. I think Scarlets have been very lucky with their injuries, actually, which is why I think they're doing better than last season.
Yeah,
We badly missed guys like Dimitri Ahip, Aaron Wainwright, countless others. Elliot D as well, though Brody has been playing well. So there is that to contend with, the injuries. And we know the Dragons have a paper thin squad. So when you start picking up injuries to a paper thin squad, you're not left with much quality, I'm afraid.
no.
And that's the problem, isn't it? On the decision, though, I have no doubt this decision was driven by David Wright, the chairman. So I've only met David Wright a couple of times, but I've heard an awful lot about him. He's a lot more ruthless, I would say, than David Buttress. In fact, I would go as far to say if David Buttress was still Dragons chairman, Dai Flanagan would probably still be Dragons head coach. David Wright, as we know, Gav, is a very driven businessman who wants results. Do you remember the very first pod that we recorded of this Dragon's Lair series? Do you remember when we talked about David Wright, the interview he gave to Steph Thomas from Wales Online?
Yes.
Where he said that he wanted Dragons to be a top 8 team and to win the Challenge Cup. And we were like, whoa, it's good to have ambition, but we felt that wasn't realistic, did we? And I just wonder, are the ambitions of the Dragons owners realistic, given the squad and the resources that we have? Because ambition is good, and maybe there is an argument to say we need to be a little bit more cutthroat. We have to make unpopular decisions if we do want to survive and kick on and be a successful team. But then I also think, well, instead of saying stuff like we want to be a top 8 team and we want to win Challenge Cup, why don't we just start at the bottom and say, hang on, let's stop being the worst team in Wales first. Yeah. Let's get out to the bottom 2. Let's avoid the basement battle with Zebra, which we always seem to have, and let's go from there. What do you think?
You've got to back up with resources. All one good saying, I want to be a top 8 team. So let's look at the top 8 teams. Munster and Leinster, budget over 12 million. Benetton, budget over 10 million. Glasgow, Edinburgh, budget's twice the size of ours.
Yeah.
Stormers, Sharks, Lions, Bulls, all bigger budgets than us. So they aren't there by some, it's not amateur rugby. It's not because the most gifted players are playing for those clubs with wonderful coaches. They're professional setups with well-paid players in good facilities.
Yeah, exactly. But it is a ruthless game, isn't it? Pro sport, it is results-driven business. And if you're putting money into the club, which the owners are doing, you want results, you want a return, don't you? I mean, Rhys Blumberg said it when he came onto our pod. These are very ambitious, wealthy men, and they want a return at some point.
But that's fine, If I hand you 4 eggs and 4 tomatoes and tell you I want steak and chips, I don't know what you're going to get. And I know David has said he will try and come on the pod at some point, and certainly don't want to suggest I'm questioning his thinking, but that's essentially where, saying, well, I want us to be a top 8 side. Well, we haven't got those resources.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're
And
right.
it is depressing. Yeah, God, we've been doing this 20 years now. Yeah, by doing this, I mean supporting this team, and it is bloody depressing. And
It can be. Yeah.
there's very few things that have lifted. The first couple of years we were competitive, but then, since then we haven't been, have we? And
Under Paul Turner and Lynn Jones, I would say we were competitive. Yeah, we still had disappointing results, but again, we had bugger all. We didn't have a pot to piss, so we had the lowest budget out of all the
oh,
West regions in the
I,
league. So
I think their coaching period are probably the ones we should look back on most
yeah,
kind of warmly, almost, because they were wonders. But it wasn't an even playing field then, but it's even less even now. And the gulf between us and the Irish regions and the South African regions has got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've seen people saying they'd like to see Paul back. And we spoke to him recently, and
yeah,
I was clear I'm a huge admirer of Paul Turner as a man and a rugby player, but it wouldn't be the job for him to come back to now. I don't know who the person is. I'm sure we'll get to there, but
yes, we will talk about that. Going back to David Wright, though, he hasn't done a Q&A or really spoken to supporters since he's taken over at the Dragons. So David Buttress was always open and engaging. We haven't really had that with David Wright. I know he's a busy man. He got many businesses, but it would be nice for supporters to hear a bit more from him. I think he needs to come out and tell supporters what his vision is and explain the decision, the rationale behind this decision to get rid of Dai. I would like to hear a lot more from
well,
our chairman. I don't feel we've heard much from him at all.
that press release said nothing yesterday, did it?
It was very brief, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Considering what Dai had done for the club, I felt it was very. I wouldn't say
mutual consent.
Yeah.
I don't think Dai went, yeah, that sounds like an idea.
Yeah.
I think David Wright said, you haven't done it well enough, mate, use your ticket.
Yeah, and they thanked him for his services, but there was no message from Reece Bumberg or from David Wright or from any of the Dragons owners, which I felt was a little bit disappointing. But it is where it is. This is where we are now. I don't think we'd be in this position after the first block. But as I said, it's pro sport. It's ruthless, isn't it? So the question is, Gav, as well. I've seen a lot of people saying that no other coach would have done better than Dai, given the budget resources and the squad that he had. Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that. Because there are coaches who do remarkable things with less. Let's think about not Bundyaki, Pat Lam winning the URC, or not the URC, the Pro, wherever it was
Pro
in those
12,
days,
I think.
Pro
Yeah.
12 with, that's a fairly impressive achievement. But
Yeah.
so I think you can do more with the resources available.
Yeah. Absolutely. I ran a poll on the Dragons' social media pages on Facebook, on the forums, basically asking were the Dragons right to part company with Dai Flanagan at this stage of the season. This isn't the final results. This is just what it is so far. 64% of people said yes, it was the right decision. And 35% so far said no, it wasn't.
I was one of the 35%.
Yeah, you don't think it was the right decision at this point of the season, do you?
Only if there's a plan. Only if there's a plan. Because alongside Newport County, I also support Southampton Football Club. They're my Premier League club. And 2 years ago, last time we were in the Premier League, sacked Ralph Hassel, who'd done wonderful stuff with the thing, replaced him with, oh God, what's his name? The guy who was at Stoke and at Charlton, Nathan Jones. He did bugger all, then sacked Nathan Jones after 12 games and replaced him. And, basically the club was just spiraling downwards.
Yeah.
Whereas before with Southampton, when we sacked Nigel Adkins rather, and replaced him with Pochettino, there was a plan there, and the club rose as a result of it. if there's someone waiting in the wings with a plan, great. But it doesn't strike me that there is.
No, and that's the thing for me. Like I said, I can understand why the owners have made this decision.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand because they want to win games. I get that. And they want to improve. They want to see the Dragons kick on. This is their money now, not the WRU's. I get that. But at the same time, is there any value in getting rid of a coach at this stage of the season? Unless you've got a ready-made replacement, someone waiting to come in, I'm not sure I see the value in this.
I yeah, that's the thing. If on Monday it's announced that some hotshot New Zealander is going to take over, then okay, I'm listening. Let's see what happens.
Mm. So, as we know, Phil Titia is now the interim head coach. He does have some head coach experience from his Toyota Blitz and Sunwolves in Japan. So he has got a bit of head coaching experience. Now, I don't think Philo is the answer long term, but for now at least, it does seem like the best short term solution, if you like, doesn't
It's
it?
the
To
only,
have Philo in charge.
it's the only short-term solution, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. I mean, when you look at the other coaching staff, you're not going to put Sam Hobbs and Matt O'Brien in charge, I guess.
No.
So I don't think we're going to see an immediate upturn in results and performances under Philo. And I think if people are expecting that, then they're going to be disappointed.
I think this is fundamental lack of understanding of how rugby works. And the number of Ospreys, you'll be fine with him. You'll be fine with him. Let's take the rose-colored glasses off a second. He was a good player at Ospreys. Doesn't necessarily make you a great coach.
No,
It's
no.
if there's lots of good players who made terrible coaches.
Yeah, no, you're right. I am interested to see his squad selection and his tactics, and just to see how a Fia Tiatia led team is any different from Dai's.
But it's not. Where's he going to make variants? I don't. Where is he going to make changes? Is he going to make changes, if that makes sense? Kind of because back row, well, back row more or less selects itself currently, doesn't it? Second row does.
Yeah.
Front row does. I'm wondering where these, the difference is going to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, go on, Gav, sorry.
But yeah, unless he can unlock an extra 10% from these players, which is what good coaches can do. They can unlock an extra couple of percent, but
I know this is a football term to use now, but do you reckon it could be a chance of a new manager bounce in the first few performances?
but I think that's a football thing rather than a rugby thing, because rugby is far more complex sport, isn't it?
But it happened with Dai Flanagan. We beat Munster, and we nearly beat the Sharks, and then we beat Ospreys and Zebra. So it can happen, I guess, but it's just whether it will happen, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the question. By the way, I want to debunk a conspiracy theory because everyone said that when when Philo was appointed as defence coach, that it was the writing on the wall for Dai. I don't think that's the case.
No.
Because if the board had made this appointment, if the board had gone out and got Philo, then maybe I could understand. But to be fair, it was Dai who chased Philo. Dai's worked with him at the Ospreys. They're really good mates. And this is what makes it interesting. How does Philo now feel seeing his mate getting sacked and now he's having to be head coach? Does he even want to be head coach? Because if he does well, for example, if he picks up a few results and then performances do improve, he might not want the head coach job on a permanent basis. So this is another thing to consider. But I don't think the writing was on the wall as soon as Philo arrived. I don't buy into that conspiracy theory deal.
No. Because if he really wanted to be a head coach, he would have been a head coach. And since being a head coach a couple of times in Japan, he's only been an assistant.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, I don't quite buy into this. As soon as they appointed Philo to come in, it was the writing was on the wall for Dai. I don't buy into that at all. As you would expect, social media was eating itself alive, as it usually does with news of this nature. And people were already coming up with names to be included for Dragons' permanent head coach. The two most popular names, what do you think they were? What do you think most fans were calling for?
Toby Booth and Graham Roundtree,
Yes, correct.
because I've seen both those names a million times. I'm telling you now, there's more chance of either of those men being the next president of America on Tuesday than there is of them being Dragons coach.
The interesting thing about Roundtree is, and not a lot of people know this, but he very nearly became Dragons coach back in 2019. So it was a short list of the final shortlist was three people. It was Kerry Jones, who we've had on this pod. It was Dean Ryan, and it was Graham Roundtree. Graham Roundtree was interviewed for the job in 2019, and he missed out
Yeah.
to Dean Ryan. And I do wonder what Dragons would have been like under Graham Roundtree. Would we have seen any improvement? I don't know, but it does make you think, doesn't it? So we could have very nearly been Dragons coach in the beginning, but I can't imagine him showing any interest in this role now, Gavin. Can
But that was before he'd ever been a head coach in 2019. Then he had he's won the URC,
Yeah,
and apparently Edinburgh are interested in him.
yeah,
And if you had
that
a
makes
choice,
sense.
if you had a choice between Edinburgh or Dragons, you'd be doing that. And English clubs are interested in him as well. There's no and Booth. Firstly, not a chance. Secondly, no, because I don't even rate him that highly as a coach. I know you do, but
I do, yes. I would
yeah,
love to see Toby Booth at the Drags. It's not going to happen. It's
no,
not going to happen, but I would love to see him. He wants out to Welsh rugby. I can't
no,
imagine him having any interest in this job.
no. He wants to go back to England. Bit nearer, I suppose. But it's and this is my question. This is my who then? That's the first two names that come up. Neither of those. I saw somebody say Pat Lam. Yeah, because Pat Lam will take a 75% pay cut.
We
And
can't buy him out of his contract. He's in a
no,
long-term contract with Bristol. It's not going to happen.
well, and he's a bloke who could win the Premiership in England and is on. Because I wonder how much Dai was on. Not that much, I reckon.
No. I mean, I don't want to speculate on people's wages, but I can't imagine
No,
he was on really high. He certainly wasn't on Dean Ryan's wages. We
no.
know that.
And that's the thing. Oh yeah, Pat Lam would be a good choice. Pat Lam, who's earning like £275,000 a year at Bristol. Yeah, he's.
Okay, so my question to you is this then, Gav, right? I know it's early days to be discussing this, but do you have any credible suggestions for Dragons head coach? Can you
Well,
think of anybody who would be available and who would want it? That's the other question we can ask ourselves. Who actually wants to come to the Dragons?
this is the issue, isn't it? There
Yeah,
are, so I think what I would be doing now, and I don't have an answer. I've got a theory, but not an answer. I would be looking to New Zealand. I'd be looking to South Africa.
a foreign
Uh,
coach. Yeah.
yeah, and I'd be looking, kind of Curry Cup level. I'd be looking at wherever the NPC and looking at the coaches there and saying, right, who's young, who's unproven, but who's done a lot with limited resources, and
Yeah.
see if we can bring someone in like that. Because we aren't getting a big name, and after the names in Welsh rugby, no thank you. I had someone else as well saying, "Well, why don't we get Dale McIntosh?" The face I made when I read, I was, oh Jesus Christ.
What about Dai Young though? Because a couple of people mentioned Dai Young. I like Dai Young at Cardiff.
Yeah, do we want to get ourselves mixed up with that though? Because we still don't know why he left, do we?
Well, there's rumours, but I mean, I'm not going to discuss them on here. But I
Yeah,
did
I
like
know.
Dai Young. He
Uh,
did have success with Cardiff. He won the European Cup twice, the
yeah.
Challenge Cup, so EDF Energy Cup.
Well, Dar Young is probably a better shout than Toby Booth or a Graham Roundtree.
It's realistic.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's a realistic shout, isn't it? And then you'd be looking at, do we look at SRC coaches and see if any of those bad? I don't think there's any there that leap out, is there?
It's really difficult when you think about who's out there now and who would actually want the job to come up with any credible alternatives, any credible candidates. I just think we need a coach, Gav, who's come from a winning environment.
Yeah.
A coach that's won trophies on limited resources, knows how to get the best out of what he has at the disposal. I mean, I know you're going to laugh at this because they're doing really bad this season, but I would love somebody like Baxter from Exeter Chiefs.
Yeah, no bad shot.
Rob Baxter, a coach like that, because when he took over the Exeter job, they had nothing.
No.
And he built them into a very credible, successful Premiership winning.
I like team. Rob Baxter as a coach, but again, he's earning, kind of thick end of six figures.
But it will be interesting to see who is on the shortlist for the owners, because they are ambitious and they have got money. I know everyone thinks the Dragons haven't got money, but the playing budget is what it is. Coaching appointments, my understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected on this, if anyone knows different for sure, then feel free to get in contact and correct me. But as far as I'm aware, staff and coaching staff, they're on a separate budget. It doesn't come out to the playing budget. There's a separate pot for that. So they can be ambitious and try to get a successful coach. But like I said, the question is, who would want to come to the Dragons given the state of the team?
That's the challenge, isn't it? You can have all the money you want and you can say, look, use ridiculously large salary, but it'd have to be somebody who'd be willing to really get their arms and their hands dirty, wouldn't they? Because it's a big bloody job, and I just don't. The person for me that I would have been interested in, but we've lost when that trainer's gone now, is Mark Jones.
Yes, I agree. Very good coach. Yeah.
But that trainer's left the station now because he's taken on the Ospreys job when Booth leaves. And but that would have been the kind of wish list one for me. Young, something to prove.
Yeah, we either go down the young and unproven coach, which is one you County have actually done with Nelson Jardine. Not entirely convinced it's working out just yet, but he has picked up some good results. Or we try and sign a big name. We actually put ourselves out there, splash the cash. If the owners put their money where their mouth is, it's going to be very difficult to get a top-end coach to come to a club like the Dragons. But if you don't try, you'll never know, I guess.
Someone like Nelson Jardine, though, to use as an example, at least you can see what he's trying to do.
Yes, you can.
He's got definite playing style. Whether or not he's got the players to do that is another thing entirely. But that's a conversation for a different place. But that's what I just like somebody to come in and say, right, this is my vision. This is how we're going to do it. Because and Dai always said, "Oh, I'm all about playing open, free flowing rugby." Never really saw that. You saw the intent to do it, kind of.
I just want to win games, Gav. I just want to see Dragons win games. I don't care about sexy rugby, free flowing rugby. I know we're in the entertainment business, as Toby Booth likes to point out, but people have a pop at the Ospreys for their attack, and their attack is bad. I think they're ranked 16th, actually, in the URC for their attack. But they've got the forward pack to compensate for their weakness in attack. No, we haven't got that. I just want to see us win more games. If that means being a bit more direct, a bit more forward-orientated, then so be it. I'd rather see us play dull rugby and win games than chuck the ball about, play sexy rugby, but don't win anything. But the problem is we don't have the front five to play that kind of physical, direct game. We haven't got a platform. If we have scrum is yet again letting us down.
And that's the thing with Ospreys. People are like, oh yeah, it's entertainment, but Ospreys are the least entertaining. Well, we're probably less entertaining, but that's just because we don't do a lot. But, kind of they aren't entertaining rugby. But last year's season, it was effective, wasn't it? And I always think of that Judgment Day game where Cardiff played all the rugby, but Ospreys won it by
Yeah,
by taking a stranglehold up front. It was a hell of a game, but
yeah, absolutely. I still feel really sad about this though, Gav, because at the end of the day, a good man has lost his job, and I really didn't expect this to be talking about this on the first block of the URC.
yeah,
It's a surprise to me. People say, "Oh, it's not a shock, it's not a surprise." I think they're lying because I did not see this coming. I did feel this was going to be a season-defining moment for Dai Flanagan, and I was slightly concerned after that Connor performance, I have to say. But I thought the owners would have given him another run of games. I expected him to make a next block. So whilst I understand why the owners have made this decision, I'm still not entirely convinced that it was the right one. I can see both sides of it, but what we do know is a good man has lost his job, and it's sad, isn't it? And I hope Dai goes on to bigger and better things now. I hope he gets a job at top club because he deserves that. He really does, doesn't he, Gav?
and attack coach at a Premiership club or something, he'd do a great job, I reckon.
Yeah, I'd love to see him get a job at something like Munster or, like you said, a top club, like as an assistant attack coach or in the academy. Because I think he's got so much to offer. And we have to remember, he is a young coach, and we birded him with so much. And
How
like I
old is
said, I
he?
think
He's not 40 yet, is he?
no, he's still in his late 30s. I think, yeah, very young in coaching terms. Yeah, it's a real shame. I'm gutted for him. I really am. He's a good bloke, and I do hope he finds
Yeah,
something
absolutely.
very
And
soon.
I really enjoyed the chat we had with him on here. And, I'm just sad for him on a human level.
Yeah, same. And when you look at the reaction of other supporters who aren't Dragons fans, there was a lot of support for Dai, and a lot of people saying that the board have made the wrong decision, and it's crazy. And we were playing good rugby, which I don't entirely agree with. I
No.
don't think we're playing good rugby. Yes, we had improved performances, but the results still remain the same. And this new ownership group, they want results. It's their money they're putting in. They own this club. They want results. It's a results-driven business. I get it. I understand. I think it's harsh on Dai, but I get it. If it's your club and it's your money, you want a return on your investment, don't you?
Yeah, he was paid to do a job. They weren't doing the job as well as the owners wanted it to do.
Yeah.
I think we can be sentimental about it because we haven't put millions of our own money into it, have we?
No, no,
So
absolutely. That's the problem. And the environment of Welsh rugby, as we know, is toxic. It's so unbelievably toxic and difficult. There's a lack of money across the board. It's tough for any coach that takes on the Dragons, right? If they turn us around and they make us competitive and they make us, win more games, make us a credible rugby team, they should instantly be given URC Coach of the Year award. Honestly, I think
oh
the
God, yeah.
Dragons head coach is one of them, maybe apart from Zebra, it's the most difficult job in European rugby because you haven't got a lot to work with. It's the culture. How do you turn around a team, Gav, of perennial losers, a team with losing embedded in their DNA? And that might sound incredibly harsh, and I don't want to be negative, but that's kind of where we are at the moment. It's hard, isn't it? We've had so many coaches now, and none of them have really turned us into. Coaches have made us punch above our weight. I talked about Paul Turner. Obviously, Mike Ruddock was fantastic for us. That's what led him to get the Wales job. Lynn Jones, but since then, none of them have. It does make you wonder. Again, I know I'm sounding negative here, and I don't mean to be. Is this job a poison chalice?
Well, I think being really honest, I think most jobs in Welsh rugby are poison chalice right now. I wouldn't want to be Wales coach because you have to work with the WRU. And what are people expecting? And yes, Cardiff and Scarlets are doing well, but they haven't really played any of the big boys yet. Let's see what happens when they
Well,
have to
Scarlets
do
beat
the.
Bulls, to be fair. They did have a very good win over Bulls, so you got to give them that at least.
Yeah, no, that was, but it's the Munster and Leinsters because they're the consistent ones, and because the South African clubs when they travel are less effective. Uh, So yeah, I don't know. You've got a budget half the size of everyone else. I don't know what you're hoping for.
Yeah. I got a feeling that WRU are going to have a say in this coaching appointment because if this deal gets done, this new agreement, So that 20% equity stake now, that's off the table.
Yeah,
Because I don't know if you read this in Wheels Online, that's off
I
the
did.
table. And it's now a golden share, which still gives Gatland and the WRU some control over players at regions, the minutes they play, what position they play. They can have them play for another team. And they also get the say over coaching appointments. So I wouldn't be entirely surprised if the WRU have some sort of say in this new coaching appointment as well. Just putting that out there. So
yeah, but who do you give it to? This is the question, isn't it?
Well, I would say the last time WRU had a say in the Dragons coaching appointment, we ended up with Bernard Jackman.
Yeah,
Lovely guy,
say.
lovely guy, great pundit, but we know that did not end well at all.
No.
So I'm very sceptical to trust anything that WRU have any involvement in, quite frankly.
Well,
just
they
one more
give
question.
Pivac a job.
Wayne Pivac, we never talked about him, but he's coaching in Japan, isn't he? Is he coaching Japan now, or is he gone back to New Zealand? I thought he was in Japan.
No, he's in Japan. Yeah, let's not talk about Wayne Pivac. I'm scared that
That's not a credible option for you, is it, Gav? No, Wayne Pivac.
He's a terrible coach.
Well, come on, he did a good job at the Scarlets, and he did win a Six Nations with Wales. I know it ended terribly. I mean, any coach that loses to Georgia and Italy in the calendar year was always going to get a sack. But for the Scarlets, Gav, he won the bloody Pro 14
with
or Pro 12.
With a great side. A great side.
Recruited well, didn't they? They brought in Hanley Parks, John Barkley,
without being too much of a dickhead about it, you'd be hard pressed not to do well with that group of players that they had, with Tyburn, with Barkley, with Hadley Parks. That's a great side. We haven't got that, have we?
No, we certainly haven't.
And
I still think there's talent though at this region, Gav. I know people say we haven't got the quality. I know we haven't, but there's a lot of talented youngsters there, and there is a lot of quality to be, in my opinion, a bit better than what we have been. But that's not all on Dai's fault. The players, by the way, they need to show some responsibility as well. I know that's how it works in sport. When bad results happen, it's always the coach's fault. He gets the chop. I get it. That's how it works. But I think some certain players need to front up and accept responsibility as well. The poor goal kicking, for example, the decision making, the missed tackles. That's not Dai's fault.
So I'll just put ChatGPT, who ChatGPT would select as our next coach. So
what have said?
Mark Mapletoft, the England under-20s coach.
Never heard of him.
I remember him as a player. I don't know what he's like as a coach.
It's just hard to think of any credible person to take over, isn't it? But like I said, I am interested to see if these owners are very ambitious. By the way, these are the same owners who, I think this come from Ho Young Hu, but one of them actually inquired about signing Anto DuPont. If you listen to the Scrum 5 podcast, I mean, this is an ownership that wants top 8 and they want to win the Challenge Cup. So,
well, yeah, I'm sure he'd want to give up Toulouse to go and live in Rogerstone. Right, this is my mad idea that has just popped in my head.
Go on then.
What if we give it to Dan Lydiot? So tell you what, Dan, you're an experienced man. You know what you're doing. Get some experienced blokes around him.
So he's already been coaching. He coaches the academy kids, doesn't he? And he's contact coach, I believe, at the minute at the Dragons. Yeah. I don't know how that'll go down with the supporters, but he'd be cheap. It's in-house. But maybe that's the problem. Maybe we need to stop doing this now. Maybe we need to cut the jobs from the boys and start hiring better people from outside of environments.
Have Philo around him, getting a good attack coach, getting a good scrummaging coach.
See, I'm just not convinced. Even if Philo does do really well in the second block, I'm just not convinced you'll won the job.
No,
I'm just not convinced, but we'll see. We said it was going to be a short one, so we only done maybe an hour. Final one for me then, Gav. I know it's difficult to answer, but where do the Dragons go from here? How optimistic are you now for the rest of the season? Are you more or less optimistic than you were before?
Less.
You're less optimistic. Okay.
Yeah. because it feels rudderless. Until somebody says to me, this was the plan all along, it just feels rudderless.
Do you think the owners are panicked?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of how I feel about this as well.
I think they've paid too much attention to what's happening in their social media, in the press, and in everything else.
I wonder if they're influenced by Munster because they sacked Graham Rowntree. I mean, 2 departures in a week. I mean, is rugby getting more like football now?
The Graham Rowntree, though, apparently was to do with the players turning.
Oh, really? I haven't.
Yeah, apparently. So that's what the rumours are suggesting, that he had fallen out with the board and the players didn't back him, they backed the board.
Oh, right, okay. Well, there we are then. We've given our reaction to the Dai Flanagan departure news. Like I say, I just want to, I don't know if you listen to this pod, but Dai, all the very best to you, mate.
Yeah.
To you and the family. Hope you find another job really soon. You're a good young coach. You've got loads to offer. So I'm sure you won't be out to work for very long. And then very best of luck to Philo Tiatia in the hot seat, because let's be honest, Gav, he's going to need it, isn't he? any coach that takes over the Dragons, good luck to you.
I'm hoping to be there for the Cardiff game as well. So,
oh God, really? It's on a different meaning now, doesn't it? Because normally my interest in this game is zero. I think it's one of the worst derbies in world rugby, to be honest. It's very hateful. But because this is Philo's first game, it does make it a bit more interesting to see how players are going to react. You know, is it going to be backs against the wall? You know, because this could unify the players a bit. You know, this could galvanise them, this sort of thing. Or is it going to be same old Dragons and end up, as they usually do, just proceed and defeat the Cardiff?
I fear the second rather than the first, but
yeah, so do I. But we'll see. Who knows? We'll see. Okay, Gav, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining me at short notice. We've done this podcast on the hoof. It wasn't planned, but I did have permission from the wife to do this pod. So, it's all worked out well in the end. But like I said, I really do want to be recording a pod like this at this stage of the season. So
no more emergency pods this season.
Yes, that would be nice. And I would really like us to record some victory pods.
Yeah.
Because I like it when we do victory pods. It's nice. It's fun. It feels good. When we talk about bad news all the time, it's just not very good, is it, at all?
Yeah. Yeah. No one wants to talk about the dark side of stuff all the time today, but
absolutely not. Okay, yeah, thanks again, Gav. I'm off now to get pina colada. But until next time, take care and goodbye.